Hi, Matadors. It's your principal, Julie Parks, and I'm here today to talk to you a little bit about the new hybrid schedule. Although the hybrid schedule is not due to go into effect until we go into the red tier, it's really important that you understand what this new schedule is going to look like. So as we close out this semester, I wanted to take a few moments just to walk you through the hybrid schedule so that you're prepared when we do go into the red tier and come back to school. The first thing I wanted to touch upon is the reports from our students about who's going to do what when we go to hybrid. Well, right now, 78% of our students have reported that they will come back to Miramonte physically during a hybrid schedule. That's fantastic. We are really excited to have our students back on campus. 22% of our students are going to remain in a remote model, which we're really happy to be able to accommodate under the schedule. So I just wanted to give you a little data as we got started so that you had a little bit of a frame for what this might look like when you come back to Miramonte. I want to spend just a moment on the guiding values that we went through as we were designing the schedule. I won't go over all of these points, but there's a few that I'd like to highlight. Our really important priority was minimizing disruption to student schedules. We heard loud and clear from students and from parents that changing schedules mid-year would not be ideal for students. Our teachers felt the same way. So in this new schedule that we will be rolling out when we go into the red tier, no one's schedule should change very much, which is great news in terms of the stability of your year and making sure that you stay with the great teachers that you have. So this is the hybrid schedule. And I'm going to go through a couple different things on here for you just to make sure that you understand what's going on. The first thing that you might notice is that the schedule looks a little different than our traditional schedule. Instead of flip-flopping between periods 1, 2, 3, 7, and periods 4, 5, 6, and 0, we'll see our periods 1, 2, 3, 7 back-to-back with each other on Tuesday, Wednesday. And then periods 4, 5, 6, and 0 back-to-back with each other on Thursday and Friday. This really had to do with the logistics of teachers planning to teach students on a hybrid. And we believe this model will make sure that teachers can plan a little bit more streamlined for their students coming in, and that we can keep the two groups, Group A and Group B, on a very similar schedule with one another. So let's look at Groups A and B. In the red on Tuesday and Thursday, Group A students will come live to school for their hybrid instruction. They'll physically come into our classroom spaces, which have been set up for students to be here, albeit in smaller numbers. During that time, Group B will be at home learning remotely, but still checking in over Zoom with their class. On Wednesdays and Fridays, Group B will come in physically to campus, and Group A will be home learning remotely, but again, still checking in to class over Zoom. Now, the way that this is going to look between groups A and B during the week is really dependent on the teacher and the type of instruction that the teacher is trying to do in the class. Your teacher will be able to tell you more about what he or she envisions this time looking like. But what you can be sure of is every day, Monday through Friday, you will be checking in live with your teacher, whether it is on Zoom or whether it is in person. We'll be having daily contacts. So just to summarize this first screen here, we're going to be seeing Group A coming in on Tuesday and Thursday, and Group B coming in on Wednesday and Friday physically. So let's take a look at Monday. Well, Monday looks a lot the same as Monday looks right now. We're going to retain our Cohort Academy from 9 to 9:45 in the morning, and then you can see that the rest of your day is pretty open, but you should be counting on about 40 minutes of asynchronous work from each of your classes. Not many changes happening on Monday. Both groups A and Group B will be asynchronous on this day, doing the exact same thing. That Cohort Academy will continue, and we will continue to roll out different school-wide lessons during that time. Now, one thing I wanted to talk about is what's happening while some of the class is remote and some of the class is in person. I mentioned that this might depend on the teacher, and it definitely will. All groups will be checking in the morning, but whether the remote group stays in the class live streaming over Zoom or goes off to do work independently is really dependent on the teacher's needs. Let me give you a couple of examples. In a math class, for example, a teacher may want to continue to make progress through the different chapters of the book every day during the class period. So what the math teacher may choose to do is have all students stay in class, live students sitting in the seats in front of the teacher, and students who are remote on Zoom, listening to the same lecture, seeing the same demonstrations, and having the same ability to ask questions. That's one way that it could look. Another way is, let's say, a science class. Maybe on one particular day, a science teacher wants to give a lab. Well, the students at home are not going to be able to actually participate in that lab. So the teacher may say, all right, remote students, I'm going to give you some pre-lab work to do independently today while I work with group A, and tomorrow I'll see you to do the lab physically here in person. And at that point, the teacher may release the remote group to go and do work independently and keep the students in person to do the live lab. So this really depends on what the teacher is trying to do during that time. As we get closer to rollout, you can be sure that your teachers will share what norms your teachers will have during this time. Another thing I wanted to point out is lunch. You can see that it looks like we've got Academy happening a lot every week. That's absolutely true. We're going to have Academy every single day. But one way that we're going to make this work is by staggering our lunch. So you can see on Wednesday that's highlighted right there, there's an Academy and a lunch sitting side by side, a 5-minute passing period, and then again a lunch and an Academy sitting side by side. We'll be splitting our students into 2 different lunch groups, an early lunch and a late lunch. We're going to do this by grade level. More to come on that later. While you are at your lunch, the other group will be in their academy, visiting with teachers and getting extra help. And then when the early lunch kiddos are done, they'll go into academy, and the late lunch kids will go out to get their lunch. This is a really great way for us to stagger the movement of students, make it easier for you to get lunch in the lunch lines, and make sure that we're keeping our distance even when we're outside during our free time. So some general aspects of this: block periods are 75 minutes long. Each day begins at 8:30, so a little earlier than we've been doing now, but still later overall than our regular bell schedule. We may have some staff who will be live streaming from their homes. We don't have many staff, thankfully, that fall into this category, but we do have a few because they won't be able to be back at school that will be live streaming in. And we think this is the best way to make sure that you keep your teachers and that our teachers are able to keep serving you. There'll be a lot of safety guidelines coming out, so stay tuned for that. And there's still some negotiations happening about how things will happen, but you can count on there being a little bit of time leading up to the rollout of the hybrid schedule to get us all ready to go. So before I finish, I want to talk a little bit about distance learning Cohort C, that third group of kids who might be staying remote throughout any time that we are open on hybrid. These students will still be included in the class, just like every student. Their schedules will not change. They'll be able to go along with all of the rest of the students in their classes, but they will be fully remote, which means each day these students will Zoom into their class. They'll be attached to one of the other groups, A or B, and so they'll be coming in with either the A group on Zoom or the B group on Zoom, depending on what side of the cohort that they are on. Their activities might look a little different because accommodating students online is just different than seeing students in person, but the teachers will be working really hard to make sure that the experience is equitable. And there'll be some designated time during the day for Cohort C to get help. So you can see on this image here that there's 3 different spots in the schedule for teachers that they could offer their Cohort C support. Each teacher will choose one of these times to offer the extra office hours, and these will be for our Cohort C students specifically so they can drop in and get some extra help, since Cohort C students will not be able to access Academy because they won't be on campus. So here's the timeline in front of you. You can see we've already made some progress through here. You can expect to get your schedules in early January. We're doing a lot of work right now in the background to get those schedules ready to go. And when we come back in January, we'll need to make some last minute adjustments with the second semester schedules that change for some students. And then we'll be rolling out those schedules to you early January. Now, just because it can be a little bit unclear, please know none of this is happening until we enter the red tier, and you will have ample warning before that happens. So you can count on coming back to school after our winter break on the same remote schedule that we've been having for the whole year. So no changes until we give you the signal that they're about to happen. Next steps for us really include getting our facilities ready, working on those norms and protocols, making sure that we continue to serve you at a high level on distance learning, and beginning to have discussions about what hybrid will look like. So stay tuned for some more opportunities to ask questions and get information. Thank you so much for joining me for this. I hope this helped clarify some of your questions. I'll be putting out some Academy sessions for Q&A for students in the upcoming weeks, and so I'll look forward to seeing you in those sessions. Thanks so much for listening this morning, and go Mets!